Before my housewarming, my sister said, "Dad promised me this house." Mom agreed. I just smiled. Having you here listening to me means a lot. Watch until the end and let me know in the comments which city you're watching from. I'm really curious to see how far my story is reaching. Before the housewarming party, my sister said, "Dad promised this house to me." Mom agreed. I just smiled. Swallowing the bitter pill of betrayal that threatened to choke me. 5 years of my sweat, tears, and savings had gone into this house, and with one casual sentence, my sister Vanessa had pulled the rug from under my feet. "You're joking, right?" I managed to keep my voice steady as I arranged appetizers on the marble kitchen island, the same marble I had spent weeks researching to find at an affordable price. Vanessa flipped her perfectly highlighted hair over her shoulder. "Why would I joke about that? Dad said I should have something stable for when I start a family." She examined her manicure, not even bothering to look at me. "He's signing it over next month." Mom bustled in, carrying a vase of flowers. "It makes sense, Natalie. Vanessa needs the stability. You're so independent, always have been." Independent. The word they always used when they meant, "We don't need to worry about you." As if my independence was a reason to take from me, not support me. I gripped the edge of the counter, feeling the cool stone under my fingertips. This house, this beautiful Victorian with the wraparound porch, had been a labor of love. When Dad inherited it from Grandpa 3 years ago, it was practically falling apart. I was the one who took unpaid leave from my job to oversee the renovations. I was the one who transferred $48,000 of my savings to help cover costs when the foundation issues turned out to be worse than expected. I contributed most of the renovation money, I said quietly, watching Mom's face for any sign of recognition. "And we appreciate that, honey. But this is what your father wants." Mom patted my hand like I was a child who didn't understand basic arithmetic. "Besides, you love your apartment in the city." My 600 square foot apartment with the leaky ceiling and temperamental heating. The apartment I kept because I was sending most of my paycheck home for this house. "The guests will be here soon," Vanessa said, already walking away. "Can you finish setting up the food? I need to change." I watched her disappear upstairs, to the master bedroom I had personally restored, stripping decades of wallpaper by hand and refinishing the original hardwood floors on my knees with sandpaper when we couldn't afford professionals. 3 hours later, I stood in the corner of the living room, watching as Vanessa played hostess, accepting compliments for her house. Dad beamed beside her, his arm around her shoulders as neighbors and family friends admired the craftsmanship, the attention to detail. "Who did your kitchen backsplash?" Mrs. Henderson asked, wine glass in hand. "Oh, we hired the most amazing," Vanessa began. "I did it," I interrupted, unable to stop myself. "Laid every tile myself last summer." An awkward silence fell. Vanessa's smile tightened. "Natalie helped with some of the DIY stuff," she conceded, before steering the conversation elsewhere. Later, as guests mingled in the garden I had painstakingly restored from an overgrown mess, I slipped into Dad's study. I needed a moment alone, away from the charade. The desk drawer was slightly open, and I glimpsed a folder labeled "Property Transfer." My heart pounding, I pulled it out. There it was in black and white. A deed transfer form, already filled out with Vanessa's name. Attached was a letter from Dad's lawyer confirming the appointment to finalize the transfer next Tuesday. "What are you doing in here?" I turned to find Dad standing in the doorway, his expression a mix of surprise and something else, guilt, perhaps? The folder felt heavy in my hands. "Were you ever going to tell me?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Or was I supposed to find out when Vanessa asked me to move my tools out of the garage? Dad's eyes flicked to the folder, then back to my face. He stepped into the room, closing the door behind him. "Natalie, I know how much work you put into this place, but..." "Almost $50,000, Dad. 3 years of weekends and vacations. I turned down a promotion that required relocation because you said you needed my help here." He had the decency to look uncomfortable. Your sister needs this house more than you do. Why? The question hung in the air between us. Because she's your favorite? Because she's better at making you feel needed? Dad's face hardened. That's enough. This is still my house, and I'll decide what happens to it. The party sounds filtered through the closed door, laughter, glasses clinking, Vanessa's voice rising above the others as she described her plans for the garden patio she was going to build next spring. I set the folder back on the desk, my hand surprisingly steady despite the earthquake happening inside me. You're right. It is your house. I moved toward the door. For now. As I reached for the handle, Dad called my name, his voice softer. Natalie, wait. I never meant to hurt you. I turned to look at him, this man I had spent my life trying to please, trying to make proud. Then why does it feel like you've been planning this all along? The morning after the housewarming party, I woke up with a determination I hadn't felt in years. The initial shock had hardened into something else, a resolve to uncover the truth. I called in sick to work and drove straight to my parents' house, no, Vanessa's house, as I had to remind myself. When I arrived, Dad was alone, sitting at the kitchen table with his reading glasses perched on his nose, reviewing some paperwork. We need to talk, I said, setting my purse down with more force than necessary. Dad looked up, unsurprised to see me. I figured you'd be back. Why her? I asked, cutting straight to the point. I've contributed more to this house financially and physically than Vanessa ever has. Was that all just free labor to you? Dad removed his glasses, rubbing the bridge of his nose. Sit down, Natalie. I remained standing. Your sister needs stability, he said finally. She's planning to start a family soon. You're single, focused on your career. You don't need a house this size. So my contributions mean nothing because I don't have a husband or children? The unfairness of it burned in my chest. That's your measuring stick for who deserves what in this family? It's not that simple. It seems pretty simple to me, I interrupted. Vanessa gets rewarded for existing, and I get taken advantage of. Dad's expression hardened. That's not fair, Natalie. Your sister has been through a lot. And I haven't? I've been sending money home for years. I gave up opportunities for this house. For this family. Dad stood up, his chair scraping against the floor. This was always the plan, Natalie. Your sister and I had an agreement. The words hit me like a physical blow. An agreement? For how long? He wouldn't meet my eyes. Since before the renovation started. 3 years. They had planned this for 3 years, all while accepting my money, my time, my sacrifice. Does Mom know about this agreement? Of course she does. We're all in agreement that this is what's best for the family. I laughed, a hollow sound that seemed to bounce off the kitchen walls I had painted myself. The family? Or just Vanessa? Before Dad could answer, the front door opened, and Vanessa walked in, shopping bags dangling from her arms. She froze when she saw me. What's she doing here? She asked Dad, as if I couldn't hear her. Just having a conversation, Dad replied evenly. Vanessa's eyes narrowed. About what? About how you and Dad had a secret agreement to give you this house, even while I was pouring my savings into it, I said, watching her face carefully. For a split second, guilt flashed across her features before she composed herself. It wasn't a secret. You just never asked. I never asked if you were planning to steal 3 years of my life and nearly $50,000. You're right, how negligent of me. No one forced you to help, Vanessa shot back. You offered. Because I thought we were working towards something together, as a family. Vanessa set her shopping bags down on the counter. Well, now you know better. Something about her smug confidence made me pause. I looked at the designer's shopping bags, then back at my sister who supposedly needed financial stability. New clothes? I asked pointedly. I deserved a little treat, she said defensively. I picked up one of the receipts that had fallen out. The total made my stomach clench. $2,000 is a little treat. Dad cleared his throat uncomfortably. A suspicion began to form in my mind. Where did you get the money, Vanessa? Your teaching job doesn't pay that much. Vanessa glanced at Dad, who suddenly seemed very interested in his paperwork. Dad's been helping me out a little, she admitted. How much is a little? I pressed. That's between me and Dad, Vanessa snapped. I turned to my father. Have you been giving Vanessa money from what I sent for the house renovations? His silence was answer enough. The betrayal was almost too much to comprehend. Not only had they planned to give Vanessa the house all along, but they had also been using my renovation money to fund her lifestyle. How much, Dad? I demanded, my voice surprisingly steady despite the rage building inside me. It's complicated, Natalie, he started, but I cut him off. How much of my money went to her shopping sprees and vacations instead of this house? Dad's shoulders slumped. About half. Half. Nearly $25,000 of my hard-earned money had gone directly into Vanessa's pockets. I trusted you, I whispered, the words burning my throat. Both of you. Oh, grow up, Natalie, Vanessa rolled her eyes. Mom and Dad have always helped us. Just because you decided to be Miss Independent doesn't mean I had to suffer. Suffer? I echoed in disbelief. You call this suffering? Enough, Dad interjected, standing between us. What's done is done. The house goes to Vanessa. That's final. I looked around at the kitchen I had renovated, the living room where I had spent weekends installing crown molding, the staircase I had stripped and refinished by hand. Everything I had poured myself into, thinking I was building something for my future, for our family. But I had been building Vanessa's future all along. This isn't over, I said quietly, picking up my purse. I won't make a scene right now, but don't think for a second that I'm walking away from this. What are you going to do? Vanessa asked, a hint of worry finally cracking her confident facade. I looked at her, then at Dad. I'm going to look at the family finances. All of them. And if I find what I think I'll find, you'll both wish you had been honest with me from the start. As I walked toward the door, I heard Dad call after me. Natalie, don't do anything rash. Think about your mother. Think about the family. I paused, hand on the doorknob. That's all I've been doing for years, Dad. Maybe it's time I start thinking about myself. After my confrontation with Dad and Vanessa, I couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to the story. Something about the house kept nagging at me, a conversation with Grandma years ago, before she passed away. She had mentioned something about the house being a legacy, but I'd been too young to understand what she meant. I decided to visit the only person who might know the truth, and Elaine, my father's sister, who had distanced herself from the family years ago for reasons no one discussed. She lived in a modest apartment across town, and her surprise was evident when she opened the door to find me standing there. Natalie? Her face softened. My goodness, it's been 5 years? Too long, I admitted, accepting her warm hug. I need to ask you about Grandma's house. Something flickered in her eyes. You better come in. As we sat in her cozy living room, surrounded by photos of family members I barely recognized, and Elaine studied me carefully. So, they're finally giving Vanessa the house, she said. It wasn't a question. You knew? She nodded slowly. I figured it would happen eventually. Your father has always favored her. But why? I asked, the hurt bubbling up again. What did I ever do to make him treat me like I'm less deserving? Aunt Elaine sighed, reaching for a worn leather box on her bookshelf. It's not about what you did, Natalie. It's about what you represent. She opened the box and pulled out a yellow document. Your grandmother saw it too. That's why she left this. I took the paper from her outstretched hand. It was a copy of my grandmother's will, dated 15 years earlier. I don't understand, I said, scanning the document. This says that the house was meant for you, and Elaine finished for me. Specifically for you, not to your father as an intermediary. Your grandmother saw something in you, Natalie. The same independence and strength she valued in herself. My hands trembled as I continued reading. There it was in black and white: to my granddaughter, Natalie Catherine Willows, I bequeath my family home and property at 1482 Maple Street, to be given to her upon her 30th birthday or upon my death, whichever comes later. I looked up at Aunt Elaine, confusion and anger battling inside me. I don't understand. Grandma died 7 years ago. I turned 30 last year. Why did the house go to Dad? Aunt Elaine's expression darkened. Because your father contested the will. He claimed your grandmother wasn't of sound mind when she wrote it. As her only son, he argued that the property should pass to him. And he won? I asked, already knowing the answer. He had your mother and sister back up his claims about your grandmother's mental state. 3 against 1, my testimony wasn't enough. I sat back, feeling as if the air had been knocked from my lungs. They lied about Grandma to steal her house. Your grandmother knew your father too well, Aunt Elaine said sadly. That's why she gave me this copy, to keep safe until you might need it. But if Dad legally contested the will and won? The court ruling was based on testimony about her mental capacity, Aunt Elaine explained. But I have her medical records proving she was completely sound of mind. I also have recordings of her discussing her wishes. She paused. I never shared these because I hoped your father would do the right thing once he had the house. I laughed bitterly. Instead, he's giving it to Vanessa after making me finance the renovations. Classic Robert, Aunt Elaine muttered. Using everyone to get what he wants. I stared at the will in my hands, my grandmother's final wishes dismissed and overridden by my own family. Why didn't you tell me this before? You were still trying to please them, Natalie. You wouldn't have believed me. Her eyes held mine. Are you ready to hear the truth now? All of it? I nodded, steeling myself. Your grandmother left journals documenting how your father manipulated her finances for years. She changed her will specifically to prevent him from taking advantage of you the same way. Aunt Elaine reached back into the box and pulled out a small, leather-bound journal. This was her last one. Read the entry from April 15th. I flipped to the date and read my grandmother's elegant handwriting. Robert visited today with Vanessa. Again, they asked about my savings, about the house. When I mentioned I'd decided to leave the house to Natalie, Robert became quite upset. Said she would never appreciate it, would probably sell it. I see through him so clearly now. He's been turning the family against Natalie for years because she reminds him too much of me, too independent to control. I've spoken with Elaine about safeguarding my wishes. Natalie deserves to have something that's truly hers, without strings attached. Tears blurred my vision as I closed the journal. All these years, I'd thought I was the problem, not devoted enough, not loving enough, not deserving enough. There's more, Aunt Elaine said gently. Your father has been systematically draining your parents' retirement accounts to finance Vanessa's lifestyle. Your mother either doesn't know or chooses not to see it. How do you know this? Your mother confided in me last Christmas that they might need to sell the house soon because their savings had mysteriously dwindled. She doesn't know I'm aware of what's really happening. I felt sick. Not only had my father stolen my inheritance and used my money for Vanessa, but he was now jeopardizing my parents' future, and planning to let Vanessa sell the house that had been in our family for generations. If Vanessa gets the house, I began. She'll sell it the first chance she gets, Aunt Elaine confirmed. Your parents will have nowhere to go and no savings to fall back on. I stood up, my mind racing. I need to stop this. What will you do? Aunt Elaine asked. I held up the copy of the will and the journal. First, I'm going to make copies of everything. Then I'm going to have a conversation with my mother, without Dad or Vanessa present. As I gathered my grandmother's documents, I felt a strange calm settling over me. The house had always been meant for me. My grandmother had seen what was happening in our family long before I could. Thank you, I said, hugging Aunt Elaine tightly, for keeping the truth safe until I was ready to hear it. Your grandmother would be proud of you, she whispered. Now go get your house back. Armed with copies of my grandmother's will and journal, I arranged to meet my mother for lunch at her favorite cafe. I chose a quiet corner table, away from curious ears. Mom arrived 15 minutes late, her smile faltering when she saw my serious expression. What's this about, Natalie? She asked as she settled across from me. Your message sounded urgent. It is. I placed the folder between us. I know the truth about Grandma's will, Mom. About the house. The color drained from her face. Who told you? Does it matter? I have copies of the original will showing Grandma left the house to me, not Dad. I have her journals documenting how you and Dad lied to contest her wishes. Mom's hands trembled as she reached for her water glass. You don't understand. Then help me understand, I interrupted. Help me understand why my own parents would steal my inheritance, then manipulate me into paying for renovations on a house they never intended to let me have. Her eyes darted around the cafe, voice dropping to a whisper. Your father thought it was for the best. Vanessa has always needed more support. Stop it, I said firmly. Stop using Vanessa as an excuse. This isn't about her needing support. This is about Dad controlling everything and everyone, including you. Mom flinched as if I'd slapped her. I also know about the retirement accounts, Mom. How Dad's been draining them to fund Vanessa's lifestyle. Her eyes widened in genuine shock. What are you talking about? Your savings, I pressed. The ones that have mysteriously dwindled even though you and Dad should have plenty for retirement. She stared at me, confusion giving way to horrified realization. How much? She whispered. According to Aunt Elaine, nearly everything. Mom sank back in her chair, her face ashen. That can't be true. He would never. The same way he would never lie about Grandma's mental state to steal her house. I pushed the journal toward her. Read it. With shaking hands, she opened to the marked page. I watched her eyes move across my grandmother's words, watched the painful recognition bloom on her face. I didn't know, she finally said, her voice breaking. About the accounts. About what Robert really thought of you. She looked up, tears spilling down her cheeks. He said your grandmother was confused, that she didn't mean to exclude him from her will. I believed him. Because it was easier than standing up to him, I said, not unkindly. She nodded, ashamed. He's always been so certain about everything. So convincing. And now he's giving Grandma's house to Vanessa, who will probably sell it the first chance she gets. Mom's head snapped up. Sell it? No, that's not. We're supposed to live there for retirement. With what money, Mom? The savings that no longer exist? The realization hit her like a physical blow. She covered her mouth with her hand, stifling a sob. I'm sorry, I said, reaching across the table to touch her arm. I know this is hard to hear. What are you going to do? She asked, fear edging into her voice. I'm going to stop the property transfer. I'm going to protect what Grandma wanted, for the house to stay in the family, with someone who will care for it. Your father will never agree. He doesn't have a choice. I closed the folder. I have enough evidence to challenge his claim to the house. I could take this to court, make everything public, the lies about Grandma, the misappropriation of funds, all of it. You wouldn't, she whispered. I don't want to, I admitted. But I will if I have to. Mom was silent for a long moment, absently twisting her wedding ring. He's been having chest pains, she finally said. The doctor says it's stress-related. If you confront him with this. The implication hung in the air between us. I'm not trying to hurt him, Mom. I'm trying to save our family home and make sure you have somewhere to live when the money runs out. She nodded slowly, understanding dawning in her eyes. What do you need me to do? Talk to him. Alone. Show him what I've shown you. Make him understand that his options are to work with me on a fair solution or face a legal battle that will expose everything. Mom gathered herself, straightening her shoulders. I'll talk to him tonight. Thank you. I squeezed her hand. And Mom? Don't let Vanessa be there. This needs to be just you and Dad. She nodded again, more resolute this time. I understand. We finished our lunch in subdued silence, both wrestling with the weight of revealed truths and difficult conversations to come. I dropped Mom off at her friend's house afterward, watching her walk away with the folder clutched to her chest. For the first time in years, I saw a glimmer of the strong woman I remembered from my childhood, before Dad's controlling nature had diminished her. That evening, I waited anxiously by my phone, expecting a call from either Mom or Dad. When it finally rang around 9 p.m., I was surprised to see Aunt Elaine's name on the screen. Your father's in the hospital, she said without preamble. He collapsed after your mother confronted him. They're saying it's a heart attack. My stomach dropped. Is he? He's stable for now, Aunt Elaine assured me. Your mother called me from the ER. She's beside herself, blaming you for pushing her to confront him. I closed my eyes, guilt washing over me despite my justified actions. And Vanessa? At the hospital, playing the devoted daughter. She's already called me ranting about how you've always tried to come between her and your parents. My bitter laugh held no humor. Of course she has. Natalie, Aunt Elaine's voice turned serious. This changes things. Your father's health gives Vanessa more ammunition against you. She'll paint you as the villain who stressed him into a heart attack. So I'm supposed to back down? Let them take everything? No, she said firmly. But you need to be strategic. Going to the hospital now will only create a scene that your father's heart can't handle. I paced my apartment, conflicted. So what do I do? Wait. Let the initial crisis pass. Then approach your mother again, not with accusations, but with solutions. After hanging up, I sat in the dark of my apartment, the weight of the day pressing down on me. Had I pushed too hard? Was my determination to right this wrong worth risking my father's health? My phone lit up with a text from Vanessa. Hope you're happy now. Dad's in the hospital because of you. Don't bother coming, nobody wants you here. I read it twice, anger and hurt warring within me. Then another text arrived, this one from Mom. Your father's asking for you. Please come. I grabbed my keys, heart pounding. Whatever came next, I couldn't ignore my father's call from a hospital bed, even if it meant walking into Vanessa's ambush. As I drove through the dark streets toward the hospital, I wondered if this was all part of Dad's manipulation, a way to use his health to regain control of the situation. Or maybe, just maybe, confronting the truth had finally broken through decades of deception, and he genuinely wanted to make amends. Either way, I was about to find out. The hospital corridor seemed endless as I made my way to Dad's room. My footsteps echoed against the polished floor, each step bringing me closer to a confrontation I both dreaded and needed. Outside his room, I paused. Through the small window in the door, I could see Mom sitting beside his bed, holding his hand. Vanessa was pacing near the window, gesturing animatedly while speaking. Dad looked small against the white sheets, tubes, and wires connecting him to various machines. Taking a deep breath, I pushed the door open. The conversation stopped abruptly. You actually came, Vanessa said, her tone accusatory. Mom rose quickly. Natalie, thank goodness. She embraced me briefly, whispering, he really does want to talk to you. Dad's eyes found mine, tired, watery, but alert. Natalie, he said, his voice weaker than I'd ever heard it. Come sit. Vanessa positioned herself between us. Dad needs rest. Whatever you have to say can wait. Let her speak, Dad said, surprising all of us. Vanessa, take your mother and get some coffee. I need to talk to Natalie alone. But Dad. Please. Something in his tone brooked no argument. Reluctantly, Vanessa took Mom's arm and left, not without shooting me a warning glare. When the door closed, silence filled the room, broken only by the steady beeping of the heart monitor. I sat in the chair Mom had vacated, maintaining a careful distance from the bed. "Your mother showed me the will," Dad finally said. "And the journal." I nodded, uncertain where this was going. "I never thought you'd find out." He closed his eyes briefly. I convinced myself I was doing what was best for everyone. By lying about Grandma? By using my money for Vanessa? He had the decency to look ashamed. I was wrong. The simple admission stunned me. In 30 years, I'd never heard my father admit to being wrong about anything. "The doctor says this was a warning," he continued, gesturing weakly at the machine surrounding him. "If I don't change, the next one will kill me." "I'm sorry about your heart, Dad, but..." "No," he interrupted. "No excuses. I've been unfair to you your whole life. Your grandmother saw it. She tried to correct my influence by leaving you the house." I waited, hardly daring to breathe. "I can't undo what I've done," he said, "but I can stop making it worse." He reached for a folder on his bedside table, wincing with the effort. "I had my lawyer bring these this morning." I took the folder, opening it to find new property documents. "The house should be divided," Dad explained. "Half for you, half for your sister. It can be converted into 2 units. That way, everyone has a stake, and your mother and I can continue living there." I stared at the papers, then back at my father. "You're serious?" "Dead serious," he said, the ghost of a smile touching his lips. "Poor choice of words, perhaps. Vanessa won't accept this." "She'll have to. I've already signed." "So has your mother." He reached for my hand, his grasp surprisingly strong. "I can't make up for the past, Natalie. But I can try to make the future more fair." "What about the retirement money?" I asked. "It's almost gone." Dad sighed heavily. "I know. Another mess I've created. The house is really all we have left. That's why I need both my daughters to share responsibility for it, and for us, as we age." I sat back, processing his words. This wasn't total justice. The house should have been mine entirely, according to Grandma's wishes, but it was more than I'd expected to get without a legal battle. "What does Vanessa know about this plan?" "Nothing yet," he admitted. "I wanted your agreement first." The realization that he was, for once, prioritizing my wishes over Vanessa's was almost too much to process. "If I agree," I said carefully, "I want something else too." "Name it." "Acknowledgement. From you, Mom, and Vanessa. Public acknowledgement that I've been contributing financially all these years, that my work on the house has been substantial, and that Grandma wanted me to have it." Dad nodded slowly. "That's fair. And I want you to tell Vanessa the truth about where her money has been coming from, that you've been using your retirement funds and my contributions." He closed his eyes briefly, the heart monitor beeping a little faster. "That will be difficult. Truth often is." After a long moment, he nodded again. "You're right. No more hiding. No more manipulating." He looked at me directly. "I am sorry, Natalie. Truly." For the first time in years, I believed him. When Vanessa and Mom returned, the atmosphere in the room was changed. Dad asked Mom to shut the door. "I've decided how we're handling the house," he announced, his voice stronger now. Vanessa smiled smugly. "I know it's been a lot, Dad, but don't worry about the paperwork now. I'll take care of everything once you're home. The house will be divided equally between you and Natalie," Dad stated firmly. "Split into 2 units." The coffee cup in Vanessa's hand froze halfway to her lips. "What?" "Your sister has been financially supporting this family for years. She deserves her fair share." "But you promised." "I know what I promised," Dad cut her off. "And I was wrong. I've made a lot of mistakes, Vanessa. Favoring you over your sister. Lying about your grandmother's wishes. Using retirement money to fund your lifestyle. Vanessa's face flushed deep red. You're choosing her now? After one conversation? I'm choosing fairness, Dad said quietly. Something I should have done a long time ago. Vanessa turned to Mom. You're allowing this? I've signed the papers, Mom confirmed, her voice soft but unwavering. It's the right thing to do. This is insane, Vanessa sputtered. You're both having some kind of guilt-induced breakdown. She pointed at me accusingly. She comes in with her sob story and suddenly everything we've planned. What we planned was wrong, Dad interrupted. Deep down, you know that, Vanessa. The look my sister gave me was pure venom. You'll regret this, she hissed, before storming out of the room. Mom sighed, sinking into a chair. That went about as well as expected. She'll adjust, Dad said, though he didn't sound entirely convinced. Or she won't, I said. But that's her choice. Dad reached out, taking my hand in his right and Mom's in his left. We'll make this right, he promised. Together. As I left the hospital that evening, a weight had lifted from my shoulders. Not everything was resolved, Vanessa's fury would have repercussions, and years of family dynamics wouldn't change overnight. But for the first time in my adult life, I felt seen by my parents. Acknowledged. Valued. The house would be split fairly, just as the family itself had been split. But perhaps, in that division, a more honest foundation could finally be built. 1 year later. The autumn breeze rustled through the trees lining the driveway as I pulled up to the house, my house, at least half of it. The renovations had been completed just last week, transforming the sprawling Victorian into two distinct yet harmonious living spaces. The east wing belonged to me, the west wing to my parents. Vanessa's name was notably absent from the mailbox. I gathered the grocery bags from my trunk and headed up the walkway I had relayed myself, smooth stones forming a path that branched at the porch, one way leading to my private entrance, the other to my parents'. Today, I took the right fork. Mom answered my knock immediately, as if she'd been waiting by the door. Right on time, she said, taking one of the bags from my arms. Your father's in the sunroom. The house smelled of fresh paint and cinnamon, a comforting combination that made it feel like home in a way it never had before. We headed to the kitchen, the shared space we'd all agreed to maintain as common ground, along with the sunroom and garden. How is he today? I asked quietly, unloading fresh vegetables onto the counter. Good, Mom replied. His energy is better this week. The new medication seems to be helping. Dad's recovery had been slow but steady. The heart attack had been severe enough to require ongoing treatment but mild enough to allow for a relatively normal life, with adjustments. Less stress. More rest. A complete change in priorities. I found him sitting in his favorite armchair by the windows, reading glasses perched on his nose as he pored over a gardening catalog. He looked up as I entered, his face brightening. There she is, he said warmly. I was just choosing some bulbs for spring planting. What do you think about tulips along the eastern path? I smiled, still not entirely used to this version of my father, the one who asked for my opinion, who shared decisions instead of dictating them. I think tulips would be perfect. As we discussed garden plans, I marveled at how much had changed in a year. The legal division of the house had been finalized 6 months ago, after extensive negotiations and renovations. The process hadn't been smooth. Vanessa had fought us every step of the way, hiring her own lawyer to challenge the new arrangement. But in the end, Dad had stood firm. For the first time in his life, he'd chosen fairness over favoritism, truth over manipulation. It had cost him his relationship with Vanessa, who had cut contact after failing to block the property division. Have you heard from her? I asked, settling onto the window seat. Dad knew immediately who I meant. No, he said, a shadow crossing his face. Your mother tried calling last week. No response. "She'll come around," Mom said, joining us with a tray of tea. "She just needs time." I wasn't so sure. Vanessa's sense of entitlement ran deep, cultivated by years of preferential treatment. The sudden reversal had shattered her worldview, leaving her bitter and resentful. "How's your space working out?" Dad asked, changing the subject. "Any issues with the heating in the East Wing?" "It's perfect," I assured him. "The contractor did an amazing job separating the systems." "And you're comfortable with us sharing the kitchen?" Mom asked, her concern evident. "We could always install a second one in your wing if you need more privacy." I shook my head. I like our arrangement. Some things deserve to remain shared. The split had been carefully planned. My wing included what had once been the library and 2 guest rooms, converted now into my bedroom and home office. My parents had the master suite and a smaller second bedroom. The kitchen, dining room, and sunroom remained communal spaces, places where we could come together while still maintaining our separate lives. "Speaking of sharing," Dad said, reaching for an envelope on the side table. "This came for you yesterday." I recognized Aunt Elaine's handwriting immediately. Inside was a single key and a brief note. "Found this in my safety deposit box. Grandma wanted you to have it when the time was right. I think that time is now." "What is it?" Mom asked, peering over my shoulder. "Not sure," I admitted, examining the ornate key. "It looks old." Dad's expression changed, a mixture of recognition and resignation. "I think I know what it opens." He led us to the study, the one room in the house that had remained largely untouched during renovations. The massive oak desk that had been my grandfather's still dominated the space, its surface meticulously organized with Dad's papers and books. "There's a hidden compartment," Dad explained, kneeling with some difficulty beside the desk. "In the left panel." I never had the key, but I knew it existed. I joined him on the floor, running my fingers along the carved wood until I felt a small, almost imperceptible seam. The key fit perfectly into what appeared to be just another decorative element. When I turned it, a small drawer slid out silently, revealing a leather-bound book and an envelope. "Her private journal," Dad murmured. "And I'm guessing that's a letter for you." I opened the envelope with trembling fingers, unfolding pages covered in my grandmother's elegant handwriting. "My dearest Natalie," it began. "If you're reading this, you've finally claimed your rightful place in our family home. I always knew you would, even when others tried to stand in your way." Tears blurred my vision as I continued reading. The letter detailed her pride in my independence, her concern over my father's treatment of me, and her hope that the house would provide me with the security she'd always wanted for me. "The most valuable things in life aren't possessions," she wrote near the end, "but the courage to stand up for what's right, even when it's difficult. You've always had that courage, Natalie. It's why this house truly belongs to you." When I finished reading, I looked up to find both my parents watching me, Mom wiping tears from her cheeks. "She knew," I said softly. "She saw everything, even back then." Dad nodded, his expression solemn. "She was right about me. About how I treated you." He reached for my hand. "I'm sorry it took a heart attack and nearly losing everything to make me see it too." "We can't change the past," I said, squeezing his hand. "But we're doing pretty well with the present." Later that evening, as we shared dinner in the kitchen that had once been the site of so many tense family moments, I felt a sense of peace I'd never experienced in this house before. The division of the property had been painful, messy, and at times ugly, much like the truth itself. But in separating, we had somehow found a way to be closer. In acknowledging the past hurts, we'd opened a path to genuine healing. Vanessa's absence was felt, an empty chair at the table that might always remain empty. But it was her choice, just as standing up for myself had been mine. As I looked around at the house that had finally become a home, I realized that my grandmother had given me something far more valuable than property. She had given me the blueprint for my own strength, the courage to demand fairness, the wisdom to forgive without forgetting, and the ability to build something new from what had been broken. "To Grandma," I said, raising my glass in a small toast. "To Grandma," my parents echoed. And outside, as dusk settled over the garden we now tended together, I could almost hear her voice on the breeze, approving of the house divided that had somehow made us all stronger.